Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers and personally Kostis Stambolis for the organization of the 13th Southeast Europe Energy Dialogue. And then we will start our session, Green Agenda and Decarbonization Challenges in the Southeast Europe. During the last period with COVID and war in Ukraine, not only, with all this stress situation in the broader area, we were used to approach and to try to tackle the urgent issues, putting aside the important issues. Our session will try to focus to the important issues, which are to be implemented within the next decades, but these are the important issues if we want to save our environment and our world and our kids. We have as keynote speaker Mr. Dr. Kostas Ballaras. Kostas is part of R&D family of sustainable development. All industries, they have their own R&D. Also energy and sustainable development has a R&D. It is not known, it is not well organized as in the big industries, especially pharmaceutical or other type of industries. But this is our real R&D. Kostas is the expression of this R&D, but something that surprised me and I liked very much with Kostas was that he succeeded to make a bridge during all this effort of research between the theory and the praxis. So it's not a theoretical R&D, it is a connection, a bridge between theory and praxis. Kostas, I'll be very happy to hear what you are going to present. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's indeed a pleasure being with you all. And I have to say that I have been practically attending the two-day event. It has been exceptional, and I hope my presentation will live up to the expectations. I have to thank the organizers for giving the opportunity to be with you today. And actually, as we are completing this two-day event, we are going to be looking at the challenges, and I think very rightfully, we've been referring to several issues, and we are going to be looking at a different face of the big problem while we're trying to address what type of fuels we're using and where they're coming from, and of course the energy crisis as a result of the war and the invasion of Russia to Ukraine that has created all this turmoil. A lot of these challenges have been on our radar screen for quite a bit of time. So in terms now coming closer to the end of where this energy is used, building cities, the built environment as a whole is one of the challenges we need to get a better understanding. And that also, I will try to bring it into the bigger picture of sustainability. To start with, I wasn't sure till the last minute whether I would include this slide, but I finally decided to do so just to remind everyone that when we're dealing with a key element of the challenge we're trying to handle, buildings, the built environment, both in terms of the final energy use, they constitute 40%. And in terms of our environmental issues, challenges, problems, 24% of the greenhouse gas emissions originate from buildings. So rightfully, the building sector has been accused as being a major element of the problem, but hopefully, in view of how things evolve, and by putting the principles of energy efficiency first, the incorporation of renewables, buildings will also be part of the solution. And that is, to a certain extent, I think, one good positive message that we all need to keep in mind. But looking at both the trends of how things are going, we're going to be busy. We're going to be challenged with meeting the targets. And here you see, for example, for the greenhouse emissions, they become more and more strict from the Fit 55 down to, in a couple of 25 years down the road, which is around the corner, 2050, having the decarbonized economy. And while with the EU climate law, we have already elevated the greenhouse gas emission to cutting over half, renewable energy and energy efficient, stricter targets are in the pipeline. How we're going to reach the 2050 target is, or one of the main ways, that paths that we need to follow, is through the renovation of the existing buildings, minimizing the demand. So energy efficiency first is a major pillar in terms of addressing a lot of the issues we're talking about. So decarbonizing the building stock, and also along the lines, decarbonizing power generation, so that we are aiming and going towards increasing the electrification of our buildings. All this, putting it in a perspective by first minimizing the demand, otherwise the problem, it would be impossible to solve and address. So part of the headlines, the issues I talked at the first slide. Now I want to look at the solutions. How can we have, in addition to the huge challenges we have with energy environment decarbonization, to put them in a bigger perspective within sustainability, which encompasses a lot more. And if I was going to ask what comes to mind when someone says, what is sustainability? A lot of terms will come into mind depending on your expertise or your angle of attack, your point of view: energy, environment, economy, resources, emissions, society. Indeed, we have a variety of different issues we need to address within the context of sustainability, and a plethora of indicators, metrics that we need to somehow juggle and be able to manage them. And then you say, oh my God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to put everything together? Well, United Nations had tried to organize all this and have put together the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And right in there, what we're trying to emphasize or to focus on is number 11, about sustainable cities and communities. Of course, it does not stand by itself. It has a multitude of other associated SDGs. But while we're thinking globally, because it's a global challenge, we need to act locally. We need to come down to who's going to do the work. And who is that? We are. We are at the baseline, at the foundations of this pillar, of this pyramid, starting from the UN, coming down, for example, to the European Union, coming down to national level, different priorities, regional, and comes down to my city, my world, smaller scale, but that's where things will happen. And of course, we have key performance indicators that start from what I just briefly touched with the SDGs, coming down and enhancing them, coming down to the local level. But this is where we need to really put things together and facilitate the process of addressing them. So what have we done with this regard, with the work we have been putting together, is to come up with a common language so that we can communicate, so that we have a common perception of these complex issues, the big challenges we're trying to put together, so that we can set reliable performance target. We can monitor how well are we doing, how things are progressing. We can learn from each other, from best practices, and have all this in the bigger picture so that we can strengthen collaborations and learn from each other. And while the problem is complex to start with when we're talking about a building, but someone would say, well, if I dedicate my focus on that, I can handle it. But what about a group of buildings? What about a whole city? What about the national building stock, the European building stock, the world building stock? So indeed, as we increase the scale, we have more challenge, more complexities, but on a positive note, we have more opportunities for synergies to develop sustainable solutions. And this large scale all of a sudden changed the scale of the economics. And what we have tried to address this is to really contextualize the whole system so that we can provide it to public administrators, to the cities, to the municipalities, simple to use, robust, at a lower cost, so that they can own it and can put it, adapt it if it needs, and probably will, and put it into use. So a lot of work has gone into this. This gives you a picture of how can I do, what can I do? Well, I said, and I started with, and I said a plethora of issues, indicators. Yes, indeed. For example, at the building, there are 153 indicators. Who can manage all this information unless it's organized? Comes down to some specific solid KPIs. You look at them right there in the list on the right-hand side of the screen. A lot more when we come at a little bigger scale of the neighborhood or the city. We have something like 180 there with a few more KPIs. So what we've tried to put together is a tool that brings it all together as an output. While you organize and you do this work, you create a passport so that you can exchange information and communicate with other parts within your city or other cities within a country or crossing the border, and a certificate. So that kind of like in the idea of the label. So again, even for within our own purposes, to be able to monitor where we start, and then how with different scenarios we can improve and we can move on. And of course, then some training material so that will give a jump start to the technical staff in a municipality that don't have the expertise. Who has the expertise on all these issues? Very difficult, very hard to find. Or if you find them, of course, you can have external experts with fees. But if you want, and that's what the intent of all this work is, to keep it within the city, within the technical department of the city, they need this first information for the minimum care of how do I fundamentally address sustainability issues, to have an educational training material that you can put together, even for self-training, and be educated, or at least get started on the right path. So the big picture in this effort has been the decision-making process with the appropriate tools supported, as we said, from day one, or even day zero, of getting the right people in the room around the table so that you have and start building the right team, down to how do you start assessing your existing condition and different sustainability scenarios. What if? And then if you start implementing what you have assessed as being the most successful effort, being able to monitor this and document whether you have been improving and how much. And all this centered around the citizens, around the people, which in a way is the key to success, that people engage, people support what's happening in their neighborhood, in their city, so that it is easier to implement and reach the desirable objectives. Now, of course, you may say, okay, yeah, well, good idea, but would it work? Well, with pilots that we have already completed, as you see, the multitude of different cities, different Mediterranean cities, already completed, 9 of them. We're also now continuing and expanding this work, looking at also the south part of the Mediterranean basin, Jordan, Lebanon, Tunisia, 3 more cities that will be looking at the practical aspect of how this can help them in terms of addressing these challenges. Part of what I talked has been completed, so there's a lot of information already available if something triggered your interest, but there's also ongoing work on this, or elaborating the concept and see how we can enhance it in order to address the issues in the southern basin Mediterranean. So stay tuned, a lot more is happening, and hopefully there is an opportunity once you get the presentation to follow up and see what from the already available material could really be of interest to you and hopefully put you on the right path to address the challenges we're going to be facing as we move on to the decarbonization era. Thank you very much.
We thank you, Kostas. We thank you very much. I'm really wondering all these important but same time, let's say, complicated issues. The way that you have to split this knowledge to the people of the cities, to the municipalities, to the regions. So is there any process that you already started or you are envisaging towards this split of knowledge and understanding, even the technical issues for the objectively verified indicators to monitor the path towards sustainable development?
Very good question. And indeed, this is one of the strengths of the whole approach of the method. It's not just a descriptive or prescriptive approach, but it guides you and it takes you by hand from day one of really, like I said, get the right people in the room. So you start collecting your team, and just so that you will not get lost is the concept of the minimum, most important issues that need to be addressed. This is handled, for example, with the key performance indicator. So it's telling you what is the big picture, what is the minimum you need to do, how you're going to do it. It provides you the basic starting knowledge, training. It gives you examples. It gives you the tool to implement. It gives you case studies. So I think at the end, and proving the concept from the pilots, that it wasn't handled only by a research organization or a university, but by cities. So they took it for a test drive. And I think it has proven to the point that realizing the difficulties, but even so, it is putting you on the right track, on the right path to start building, because it is not, the solution is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to transform everything, but it gets you organized, which is a key issue, getting organized within the city, within their technical departments, in order to be able to move forward successfully.
Is there any process of educating the trainers, training the trainers in this respect? Are there any funds in order
Well,
to be at the position to train trainers,
that's,
because nothing
yeah.
could be done without funds.
You said it right. I mean, you put your finger right where the problem is. For example, during the project development that we did a couple of years ago, we had the funding to provide exactly that. So we invited several cities and some responded, and we brought them in and said, this is your opportunity, this is your training to be able to do that, though repeatedly you realize that we have that as free access. That's at least the minimum we need to secure, that all this information, all this material is available in different languages. It's multilingual, and it's available electronically, free. We can only to a certain extent provide this as we did in the past. But since we serve in a public research organization, at least in Greece, we're always open. If someone was intrigued and said, what if, we can find a solution. So we're serving the public, we're serving our role here, and we indeed would love to provide sufficient information as starting in this challenge to any city that may be interested to do so.
Kostas, thank you very much for all
pleasure.
this
Thank you.
presentation that introduced us with your way, which were really excellent, to the sustainable cities. Thank you. Thank you, Kostas. Now I will ask Kaloyan Staikov, Chief Economist of Energy Management Institute of Bulgaria, to give us his approach for the important things, not for the urgent. I know that this is what he has in mind to present us the important things. We are ready. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This is very challenging now that you put it like this. Since we're right after lunch, I'll try to be as funny and entertaining as possible, because I sure as hell need a nap, and I'm pretty sure some of you would like one as well. So I'd like to start with a humorous quote from an American actor. The quote goes like this: "If stupidity got us into this mess, why can't it get us out of it?" And trust me, by the end of the speech, I'm sure this will make sense to you. We've heard a lot of interesting presentations during the last yesterday and today. Most of them were very optimistic, which makes me very happy, because I'm not very optimistic about this. I think one of the main issues that we're not talking about is regarding the Green Deal is not the direction that we're moving forward, but how we're moving toward this direction, what the pace is, and of course, what path we're choosing to reach our goals, regardless of whether we're talking about 2030, 2050, or by the end of the century. So, what was the situation in Europe in the past 10 years? In the past 10 years, the economic, the fiscal, the monetary situation, the financial situation in Europe was very accommodative towards all kinds of policies. And it's very easy to make energy transition, digitalization policies, all sorts of policies when costs are low, when funding is available, even abundant. And of course, given all of this, it's very easy to also make very, very bad decisions. Just to give you a few numbers, during the last decade, the ECB's interest rate was 0.82%. In a lot of the time, it was actually the real interest rate was actually negative. In the first decade of this century, the interest rate of the ECB was 4.10%. So from 4.10%, we went to 0.8%. This is a huge drop, which makes funding very available, very cheap, and of course banks eager to lend out money for anything, basically. The government's deficits went from 1.9% in the first decade to 2.4%, so very accommodative fiscal policy, which means lower taxes and higher subsidies. Government debt went up from 66% to 88%, and in the Eurozone, this figure actually is 95.6%. And given all of this, GDP growth actually went down. So in the past 10 years, GDP growth in the European Union was 1.6% compared to 2.3% in the previous decade. So given all of this, what does this mean looking forward? Because of course this is the past. I think one of the best descriptions I've heard in the past couple of weeks was from the government of the central bank, who said that the EU will have to combine means with a little creativity to achieve digitalization and energy transition. Because this fiscal and monetary situation that we had in the past 10 years, we're not going to have it in the next 10 years. Or at least this is my opinion. If I'm wrong, trust me, I'll be more than happy. What we're seeing today, we've usually focused a lot on the COVID crisis, the war in Ukraine, and how both of these phenomena are affecting energy policies, prices, and so on. But actually, these are just another couple of factors in a long series of effects, which had led to higher commodity prices, higher energy prices, a lot of bottlenecks here and there, and in general are basically making doing business and making policies a lot more difficult than in the past. What we've achieved in the past 10 years at least is, in Europe at least, we've made renewable energy sources bankable. So it's very easy to find funding for such projects. The same can be said about energy efficiency. But what we haven't done is actually find funding for infrastructure and for balancing the renewable energy that we're investing in. So more or less, we've solved one problem: how to get renewables to a large enough scale, how to finance them without government subsidies and programs. But we've created two other problems, because renewables still can't stand on their own, so they need someone to support them in terms of balancing. And we've neglected investments in infrastructure. Yesterday, this was pointed out in a couple of sessions very strongly, and I think this is going to be the main challenge in the next decade. In the past, at least 10 years, we've seen a lot of pro-inflationary processes, from very loose fiscal policy, very loose monetary policy. We've seen destruction of supply chains, which means all sorts of goods and services are going to be delivered at a higher price. We've seen a push towards nearshoring, which means moving back productions from India, China, Vietnam back to Europe or the States. Again, this is going to add to inflationary pressures. Currently, we're talking about the diversifying energy supplies. Again, inflationary pressures, at least in the shorter term, but maybe in the medium to longer term as well. So all of this would mean that the low inflation of the past 10 years is pretty much a dream that we're not going to see in the next couple of years. And given this economic situation, this would mean restrictive fiscal policy and a restrictive monetary policy, which means less and less funds for new projects. So all of this is why I'm focusing so much on this. All of this is putting a lot of pressure on the energy sector and on energy policy on how to achieve certain goals. And this is why I started with the idea that maybe we should think a little bit different about the issue. So I'll leave you with another quote. We can't solve the same problem we can't solve the problems by using the same kind of thinking that we used when we created them. And I'm saying this because the solution that we are presented from the European Commission is, well, we are exposed to risk from Russia, so we need to increase investments in renewable energy sources, increase investments in energy efficiency, diversify energy supply, and so on. And we're not hearing anything about balancing, again, anything about new infrastructure projects. Exactly how is this energy going to reach the end consumer? So I said renewable energy sources is already a bankable option, but what about building new power lines, building new pipelines, building new regasification terminals? Someone yesterday mentioned that if an energy source has a foreseeable future usage of 5 to 10 years, no investor is going to invest in something like this, and of course no bank is going to lend them the money to do so because they're not going to be able to pay them back. So just one more sentence. We need, given all of this and given what we're going to face in the next decade, I think we strongly need to re-examine our investment priorities to get, so to speak, the biggest bang out of the buck. So we need to improve efficiency and we need to improve effectiveness so as to reach the at least part of the goals from the new Green Deal. And I hope we'll have a fruitful discussion afterwards. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaloyan. Yes. Kaloyan, in view of all this investment mixture, that you said that there is not enough financing for some of them. How you face the decarbonization process, it will be in line with the expected time frame, or we create something theoretically and then, because several organizations do not follow, banks, small example. And how we could create such a bridge with banks, with all the parameters in order to have globally organized process towards decarbonization. Because as you mentioned, I understand that there is no chance to be in the timeline, in the time frame that we are expecting all this super decarbonization.
Well, on a global scale, it's even more difficult, but let's start on the European scale.
In Europeans, yes.
In terms of the EU, we've seen a lot of nationalistic policies that are aimed at keeping energy prices low for the country, for the specific country, and at the cost of other countries within the EU. This was more or less the spike in energy prices we saw last year, which was more or less driven by lower wind generation, lower usage of gas due to its high price, and higher usage of coal. So in terms of a price threshold for European economies, at some point the environmental goals just come in second place. And the price is what actually drives decisions. And given this situation, given that at least in the near term, we're going to see high prices, maybe not higher than we're seeing right now, but at least they're going to stay as high as they are. I don't think there's a lot of room for international policies unless countries try to negotiate and try to be a little bit more flexible and try to look at the energy system from a European point of view rather than from a nationalistic point of view. And I think this has been the issue in the past 10 years. And that's why I focus so much on infrastructure, because in the past 10 years, with so much money available and so much government programs, we were not able to increase the interconnectivity of key infrastructure elements. in terms of gas pipelines, in terms of electricity pipelines as well. The Southeast European region is maybe an exception in this respect, but Europe as a whole still suffers from such issues. So unless we see a change of heart from different countries within the EU, I don't think we're going to see a lot of progress. And I think this is an issue that has to be addressed if we at least try to achieve a maximum of the Green Deal's goals and, of course, environmental goals up to 2030.
So you are optimist, I understand, rather than pessimist in your approach. Right?
I'm an optimist that still there is enough time to at least salvage some of the goals we've set for 2030, given that countries at least change some of their attitude towards the energy system, and at least try to look at the energy system as a whole, rather than different parts that are connected whenever they have something to gain from this.
Thank you very much, Kaloyan. Thank you. Now, I will ask Eugenia Guzilov to join us. Eugenia is
Hello.
Eugenia is the director of Romanian Energy Center, and she will be our guide in a small trip to the rest world of Romania. So, Eugenia, we are listening to you. We are ready. Please take us there. It's a nice country.
Good afternoon, and I'm happy to be with you once again on the second day of this conference. I want to greet my co-panelists and everyone in the room, although I cannot see you. So what I would like to talk about a little bit today, well, I will talk also about renewables, but I want to talk about one aspect of that watershed moment that I was mentioning yesterday. Yes, we have a watershed moment in energy markets going all around us, but we also have a revolutionary moment of our own here in Romania. What do I refer to? Since our panel is called the decarbonization, yes, it refers to decarbonization. I would like just to talk a little about the coal phase-out process that we have in Romania, and why I would like to talk about it. I don't know if some of you probably remember, but last time I attended an IEN event that was in Vienna, and it was dedicated to energy transition. So at the time, I was saying that Romania did not even conceive of the idea of coal phase out. So this was unthinkable at the time. Our politicians would not even pronounce the word coal phase out in public. And that was not such a long time ago. It was 2020, and our energy minister was saying, I did not say coal phase out. Who pronounced the word coal phase out? Now we fast forward 3 years since the Vienna event, so 2022, and what we have in Romania is a firm commitment to phase out coal, which was assumed in our National Recovery and Resilience Plan. In the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, we committed to phase out coal by 2032. But actually, on the last day of May this year, the Energy Ministry published what is called the decarbonization law. I don't know why they call it the decarbonization law, because it is actually the coal phase-out law, but they again would not call it that way, which comes up with a very strict calendar with how Romania will exit, and I quote, will definitively and irrevocably close down the coal mines and coal-fired power generation. So this was unthinkable, yet here we are in 2022, and this law is in public consultation now, and it will have to be adopted by the end of June. So as we speak, in 2 weeks' time, Romania will have decarbonization or coal phase out law. So this is how much the world can change in 3 years, from unthinkable and not saying it in public to actually having this coal phase out as a reality and as a firm commitment. Of course, our main company, Complexul Energetic Oltenia, has received substantial state aid in order to undergo through this restructuring, something to the tune of 2.7 billion euros. And part of this capacity, 1.7 gigawatts, was already closed last year. Another 1.4 gigawatts of coal-fired capacity will be closed by 2026. But what this law actually does, it is in the context of the war in Ukraine and the repower package and everything, it brings this calendar forward even more. So it's not 2032, it's 2030 that the Complexul Energetic Oltenia will exit basically its main, what has been so far its main business, the coal business. Of course, some capacity up to the tune of 1 gigawatts are proposed to remain a strategic reserve to be used at the discretion, and if the TSO, which is Transelectrica in our case, will deem it necessary. So this will remain 1 gigawatt of coal-fired capacity until 2030. Complexul Energetic Oltenia, so the company is to replace this with 8 PV parks, to the tune of 725 megawatts, and 2 CCGTs, so gas-fired natural gas power plants, which combined would have about 1.3 gigawatts. So the coal business will become something else, will become natural gas plus solar business, at least the main company, the main player that we had in that regard. This is to be funded through the modernization fund. There is enough money there to support this, but this is just to speak about the transformation that our country has gone through in such a short span of time after many, many years. I was telling you on other occasions in which the government was very reluctant and was opposing any such prospect, would not pronounce even the word coal phase out. Coming back a little bit to where we are today. So in our National Energy and Climate Plan, we have upped the level of ambition for sure to some 30.7% of renewable energy and final energy consumption. But I think that will be updated. Well, that percentage would have translated into an additional 6.9 gigawatts of renewable capacity. But that's based on the old version of the National Energy and Climate Plan, so the Romania's NECP. But in the current context, I think, and as also the previous speaker, Mr. Balaras said, the Fit for 55, but also Repower, will have one important effect. It will accelerate this trend, and it will bring forward these targets, and it will make them even more ambitious in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of deploying faster renewable capacity, solar and wind. And Romania will be no exception in this regard. So I think even if we wanted to move slow, not to make a big commitment, the fact that we're closing these coal-fired capacities will mean that we will have to move faster on the renewables front. That's with respect to what's going on. Of course, you know that we so far do not have any offshore wind. Our wind capacities are entirely onshore, but we have plans and projects that have been announced, and there is interest on behalf of the industry to do something also in the offshore area. Now, we are helped in this effort by the availability of significant EU funds and the rescue package, or the money, the funding line, which comes in the form of the funds available through the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. I hope that we will use that money wisely. And I think that's in fact the only challenge to be able to attract this money and to have lined up the mature projects so that we can absorb this money to make it easier for us to go through this energy transition. Now on the question of hydrogen a little bit, maybe. You know, we just this year will be in a position to show something and to finally acknowledge that we're moving away from coal with this law that will be passed. So in a way, we have still struggled a lot with the problems of the past. So hydrogen, although yes, we do talk about hydrogen in Romania, and it's a topic of discussion, especially in the industry. But hydrogen is still regarded as somewhat of a science fiction area. Although we do in Romania have had for many years the production of blue hydrogen, yes, associated with the natural gas and the refining processes. But the question of green hydrogen, I will tell you, that was not on the agenda of the renewable industry 2 years ago. However, with the availability of these funds, and this actually, the introduction of green hydrogen, because this is a priority for the European Union, there is this EU strategy which on hydrogen, which prioritizes green hydrogen. So this topic was more or less pushed from the European Commission down to Romania. So it's not something that Romania was particularly interested 2 or 3 years ago. But since we will have these funds available and at our disposal, I'm sure that we will see some projects being funded and materializing in the next coming years. But this is to just give you a window, an insight into why, for instance, Romania, and this is a fact, we have not yet written and we do not yet have a strategy for hydrogen. Although the ministry has been promising this for 2 years, we do not yet have it. It's planned to have such a document sometime in 2023, and the writing of this document will be financed through the National Recovery and Resilience Funds, National Recovery and Resilience Plan. But that's one of the reasons which explains, you know, why we don't have, and I am not able to tell you what Romania would like to do in this hydrogen area, because no vision was articulated at the government level with respect of what Romania wants from this green hydrogen. Do we want to be an importer of green hydrogen, an exporter? Where do we want to use this hydrogen? No estimates on the potential demand from the industry for green hydrogen. However, despite the fact that we do not have a national hydrogen strategy, unlike many of our neighbors, Poland has adopted one, Hungary has a hydrogen strategy. Despite this fact, the actors on the market, so the industry, they are putting on paper various projects, and we have announcements from Romgaz, from OMV Petrom, even from Hidroelectrica, who is planning to participate in a project that would produce this green hydrogen in Romania and then export it via maritime route via Danube to other countries, to Germany, to Austria. So there are many projects on paper out there, but even in absence of a framework and a clear direction, a clear signal from the governmental side. But it is very difficult to say right now which ones will materialize. However, we do see an interest in using green hydrogen as storage. That's definitely an area of interest. And it's also worth saying that we in Romania, for instance, have had a National Center for Hydrogen established in 2009 at Râmnicu Vâlcea. There is an institute there. And despite the existence of this center for 12 years, they mostly do research into production, transportation of hydrogen, but I wouldn't say that they were supported in any significant way by the Romanian government. So whatever support there is for pushing and developing green hydrogen in Romania, it comes from Brussels and triggers down to Romania. So it's not necessarily an initiative of the Romanian government, which is focused on solving many other issues of the past, which is what I call legacy issues, which we still struggle with in other areas of the energy sector. So I will conclude my intervention by saying that unfortunately, in our case, policy which normally should signal and give some certainty and provide confidence to the business to invest, in some cases in Romania has had the opposite effect, has been a source of uncertainty. Like in this case with hydrogen, we do not have a clear policy signal. But I'm glad that even if we don't have a strategy, we have several projects being written and developed, and hopefully some of them will be built.
Thank you very much, Eugenie. My question to you: what is your advice to the President and Prime Minister of Romania to tackle this issue? How you could bring the market, as they are pushing for some projects, important projects, as you said, to make them part of the Romanian energy sector? What you could advise President and Prime Minister, Eugenie, to do?
I would advise them to not delay making decisions and providing the signals that the industry and the private sector is expecting to have in a country like Romania, because oftentimes we have had successes and let's say we have moved forward despite the fact that the right policy signals and the strategies and the general vision for what do we want to do in this or that sector was lacking. So providing this, being more in sync with the private sector, with the industry, and offering, because to date we do not have a very clear view of what kind of industries do we want to develop. Do we want to use hydrogen in transportation or in power generation or in heating? These questions were not raised, and therefore they were not answered. So the industry is deciding each for himself what they would like to do, mainly because there's this window and there are money on the table that the industry can use for such projects. But I would say the government and the presidency could be more in sync with the market developments, and the policy is running behind in our case, and the distance is way too long. Even if normally, sure, business is the driver, but policy should not fall that far behind.
I guarantee you we will bring the issue to the BOD of VIII in order to do how we could support you towards this direction. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eugenie.
Thank you. Come on.
Now it comes my old friend Nicola Sofianos, member of BOD of VIII, a warrior of RES in the country. He has done a lot of things, a lot of work in several type of RES projects, and not only.
Thank you.
Nikos, we are ready to hear you.
Thank you very much, dear Thomas. Well, okay, my first idea was to present you a little bit the prospects of renewable energy sources in Southeast Europe, but then I changed my mind and I said maybe it's more interesting to make some comments on the three key topics that exist in this year conference: the energy security, the market integration and sustainability, in relation always with renewable energy sources in Europe and especially in Southeast Europe. So let's begin with the energy security. I will start with a question. It's a rhetoric question, so don't answer. Do you believe that renewable energy sources contribute to the energy security? I mean, not theoretically, but nowadays, now, when we speak. Well, the answer is no. No, they don't contribute. or at least they don't contribute as much as we think or as much as we hope. I'm pretty sure that in the future, renewable energy sources will contribute the most in Europe and in Southeast Europe, but not today. Do you know the reason why? Because when we started to install renewable energy sources in all around Europe and Southeast Europe, our target was not energy security. We had many kinds of targets. Of course, decarbonization, the green economy, to decrease the CO2 emissions, to confront the environmental degradation, and so on, but no energy security. Maybe in the sideline of some discussions, maybe yes, some people say that yes, our renewable energy sources will contribute in the future in energy security, but not now. Now, for the first time, European Union set renewable energy sources in the epicenter of the energy security. But let me remind you something. 7 years before and 8 years before, Germany took a decision to turn off the operation of all of its nuclear power plants and increase the natural gas imports from Russia, from elsewhere. Because natural gas was considered then to be the transitional fuel in order to develop further the renewable energy sources. Is it now a transitional fuel? It is, but there is a discussion also. Now it is a discussion. Well, yes, Southeast Europe, it's not a big market, as we know. If we exclude Romania, if we exclude Greece, Bulgaria, okay, Turkey is another thing. Yeah, if we exclude Turkey, the rest is not a big market. So, what is the most important thing about the Southeast Europe? The geopolitical factor. And what is the priority when we have such kind of factor? The energy security. So again, the Southeast Europe, as I said, follows the tail of the European Union policy, and again and again and again. Now, the second comment is the market integration. Okay, the market integration is something simple. It's not complicated in terms of theory. The scope is to connect different economic and energy activities in order to succeed the decarbonization. That's it. Okay, we have instruments, of course. And the countries of Euros are in the middle of this process. The countries of Southeast Europe are in the beginning of the process. There are mature markets and less mature markets in energy. But as I said before, there are some instruments. What are these instruments? Electrification, digitalization, smart grids, high technology, networks, interconnections, etc. So we need investment for the future. Okay, we need investment. In what kind of economic environment? We are in the middle of energy crisis with high inflation. We are in the middle of a war between Ukraine and Russia that affected a lot European countries. We try to go out from the effects of the economic effects of the pandemic, and furthermore, the indicators show that a deep and very strong economic recession is under the gates. So, as I said before, we need investments to make, we need money to make these investments. And what we have two parties, two lobbies, two groups are appear in European Union. The one says that we have to change everything we know about energy. We have to change all the structure of energy. We must change the electricity and the gas market. And the other group say, okay, the system, the markets are not perfect, are not ideal. There are problems, but please don't make such kind of radical changes, because this will stimulate fires and will create more problems and more distortions at the market. And in this discussion, with this kind of events, where is Southeast Europe? Southeast Europe again tries to follow the tail of European Union and the discussion. And as you know, market integration is about decarbonization. It's not about other things. But I think that the idea for Southeast Europe is the energy goal integrations. That means that we must integrate the energy security, the market integration, the carbonization, and so on. Sustainability, as Mr. Balaras, Professor Balaras said, etc. Now, the third comment is about sustainability, and I finish with that. As Professor Balaras said, sustainability is a very difficult term. I remember when I was a student, 20 years before, we had in Glasgow University, we had a professor who tried, the poor man, to explain us for hours what is sustainability. And he used the example of renewable energy sources. He said the renewable energy sources are sustainable. So yes, the renewable energy sources are sustainable. What about the energy systems? When an energy system is sustainable an energy system when it contains sustainable energy sources? Not always. Take as an example, not Costa Rica, take as an example Albania. The 95% of electricity, we know all this. The 95% from electricity is coming from hydroelectricity. It's a renewable, let's say, source. But the system, the electricity system, is not exactly sustainable. So when an energy system is sustainable, when it is balanced. So what we want here is a balanced system. So let's make an example, an experiment. Take away all the old power plants in North Macedonia, in Kosovo, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and replace them with hundreds of wind farms and solar parks, etc. Will you have a balanced system? Probably not. And do you know why? Because the problem is not the power plants. The power plants it's a small part of the problem. The problem is energy poverty. Do you know that the 25% to 30% of CO2 emissions in the countries we speak, in Southeast Europe, is coming from the old power plants? Only the 25 to 30%. The rest, the 70%, from where? Do you know? Inappropriate fuels, inappropriate materials that use the people to heat their houses. And do you want to tell you a real story? Not the majority of people, for sure, not the majority, but a part of the population in these countries, they go to the place where they put the old cars, they steal or they take the tires, the wheels, they cut the caoutchouc in little pieces, and they put it in these primitive heating machines they have. So the problem is the energy poverty. So do you believe that if we replace the old power plants, we will succeed finally? Sustainability? I don't think so. I'm in the renewable energy sources industry, but I want to see the real world. And the real world in Southeast Europe is not like we believe from our offices. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Nikos. Thank you very much. This last part of what you presented about sustainability, it makes me to think so many things now that really in few seconds you succeeded to make me very pessimistic for the sustainable development. And once again, that we have to have open eyes and to have much more global approach for the sustainability, as Kostas Ballaras presented at the beginning, that it is so global, it touches so many things that are interrelated and interconnected, that at the end of the day, we just have to have in mind how to make a better world, which is always, again, connected with our neighbors in every part of the world. Thank you, Nikos, very much. It was a nice lesson, what you gave to us. Now I will ask my other close friend, Kostas Sofianos. It's a guy which is the embodiment of energy efficiency in the country. He's working from the time that I had enough hair and he had all his hair black and existent in the energy efficiency. Kostas, we hear you.
Thomas, thank you very much indeed, especially when this kind of words is coming from you, a guru of legal issues on energy. It is much appreciated. Thank you very much for the kind words. Thank you. Like Nikos, I had other things in mind to say. But during the discussion, especially intrigued by what Kostas Ballaras said, and also our friend Kaloyan, I'm going to change it a little bit, and in a few minutes, I'll try to stimulate some discussion, further discussion. It's something that you cannot solve it today. As far as I understand, and I don't think I misimprint Ballaras, the role of people is very crucial, starting from the local level, even from the municipalities going all the way up. So, the role of people is very important, and energy efficiency, it's the major pillar of for decarbonization. So, I'll go to a question that you raised, Kaloyan, stating we cannot solve something that we created. So, for me then, the big question is why we are talking about decarbonization? Why this word came up the last, let's say, 10 years, something like that? Why? Is it, it's not a rhetoric question, but the question is that model, energy model that we had using all those last decades, and the model for development is not working properly. For example, for many years, we have the power, just a small example, we have a power plant producing electricity and all the thermal is going on the air. And then they are using fossil fuel, whatever is that one. And then we are going, on the other hand, to use other fossil fuel to have heating and hot water at home. that model, I think, is not working. And now we are trying to repair or to solve the problem with the same, let's say, mechanism that we have. And as Nikos just said, and I noted, we need money for decarbonization. Some people, they say, oh, we need something totally new. And the other more conservative approach stating, okay, let's see how to repair it. But the model is going to be the same. Probably then after 50, 60, 70 years, we're going to have the decarbonization period. Do we have a little bit to work towards changing the common attitude that all of us we have regarding energy? Like, for example, starting from young kids in the kindergarten, to teach them to switch off the lights, very simple example, to switch off the lights when at home, and then they will become the commuters of that, coming at home and say, grandpa or mom, switch off the lights. And slowly, because I hear about money and things, all that today's, the thing is about money and how expensive is energy efficiency, and we're going to find the money to do it. Okay, the money, you can find it. The thing is how you change the attitude of the people to understand that energy efficiency is improving their thermal and indoor air, the thermal comfort and their indoor air quality. Because that example that he just said, Nikos, it's real. We've seen it in Kosovo, we've seen it in many areas in the region. And what I'm really afraid is the coming winter. If now energy poverty is in X level in each country, it's going to be extra large. And that's the big problem. And it's not the war. In my opinion, it's not only the war. Okay, the war accelerates the things. It's a lot of things coming before the war. And one that is unbelievable is that the whole European Union didn't have any plan B for a case like that. And that famous woman, the Commissioner of Energy, never came out to the people and say, look, European citizens, we have a problem, we are working, we are going to do, I mean, at least say sorry for that mess. And always coming with Tildermans, like the puppy dog. I'm sorry, but this is not a commission. Failed, and failed strongly, and next winter we're going to see the results. Thank you.
Costa, thank you very much. It's 100% that Commission and the European Union is not the panacea of everything in Europe.
Correct.
Okay, there are countries that are able to lead all the process to the right direction. It's not always in the offices of Brussels that are taking all the decisions. Good things could lead them. The approach of Kostas Ballaras could lead them. There are things of this type that could lead them to a better policy.
They don't listen to him. Ask him if the Greek government is asking for his opinion. I'm not, okay, but he's very polite and very quiet, but I can say it. I don't care. I mean, I can say it publicly.
That's why
nobody is asking us anything.
That's why we exist. That's why we try to increase our voices with a common way, including something which is so rare in this world, common sense, in order to convince the politicians to do some better things. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry for taking so much of your time. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to thank our excellent panelists. I was really enjoying enormously, although I am in the energy sector non-stop, I enjoyed enormously all your speeches and discussions and answers. So thank you all so much. once again, I'd like to thank Iene for hosting us, and personally Kostis Tamboulis. Thank you all. Have a nice afternoon. Let's continue with another panel.